Yesterday's enhanced risk luckily did not have a ridiculous amount of storms that came with it, but there was enhanced risk, and severe weather is back on the table for days. Today's video, we're going to be looking at the day 2 outlook. The SPC has issued an enhanced risk, very similar to the one we just saw with Houston under that 10%, but in this case, we have a much larger area of 10% tornado risk. You can see it's hatched here. The SPC is predicting possible, very strong, possibly violent tornadoes. Is also associated with a 30% wind risk and a 15% hail risk. Pretty wide region here. But the tornado risk is quite prevalent over a pretty broad region here, and states such as Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama are the main threat, but you have regions all the way up to Tennessee, eastern Texas, parts of the Florida Panhandle, and Georgia are also included in this risk. Today I'm going to be looking at the meteorology of this event, seeing what we can, understand what's going to be happening, just talking about it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's a synoptic scale pattern. This is from the 15Z wrap earlier today. I can go further ahead, but unfortunately this is still 2 days out, so I'm going to use the 15Z wrap because it'll get me far enough. You can see a pretty broad troughing here. We have stronger low backside of this trough, and a little bit of a shortwave that was, I believe, causing our weather that last risk. Move forward here, you're going to see this trough begin to become much more neutrally, maybe even negatively tilted here throughout the day. See again, a little messier here, pretty broad and pretty positively tilted. But once you go forward in time, you start to get deepening right there over Texas, and a little bit of a jet streak coming through the base of that trough. Then, as of Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon here, you can see that pretty well defined troughing feature right there. At 250 millibars, it's even better defined. So you have a little bit of defluence in this region here, right where we're going to be seeing our severe weather. 700 millibars, even a little bit of a shortwave trough right there as well. See pretty well defined little kinks in the flow there. I'll zoom in here so you can see a little better. You can see there's the kink in the flow right there. So a little bit of a shortwave trough there. 850 millibars. It's again pretty well defined. Low pressure there, pretty strong lower level jet, which will increase in strength in overnight hours. Then, of course, the surface, you can see we get surface flow development right there Saturday morning, right there in central Texas, southern Oklahoma. There's your surface low, and this will move off to the east pretty slowly. So you're getting a lot of warm air advection in this region. Look at our temperature advection at 850 millibars. You can see a pretty widespread region of warm air advection. Again, you can see with these a lot of times you get this weird kind of rippling effect that happens, but for the most part, you can see pretty wide barrage of warm air advection over here. Again, not to mention moisture will be returning. See it very well here on the rat model. As that surface low begins to form, it's southerly flow coming in, and you start to get this frontal boundary forming, and there's a lot of moisture right here. You can see we even have some 70s dew points down here in Louisiana, but pretty widespread 60s over much of the region. And look at all this very widespread 60s dew points reaching up nearly to Tennessee here, actually. Some points they do. Yeah, lots of moisture in here that should really help with fueling these storms. And of course, we got to look at instability as well. That is an important factor. So here's the main region of our risk area, again, right in this region. You can see at the beginning of our period right now, we're a little bit out, but we don't have much going on. We just had that system going to the north right now that was associated with our severe weather yesterday. But the main interest is going to be this next trough moving through. Again, here are temperatures. Let's look at how they really stack up. And you can see we get, again, pretty widespread 60s, some 70s near the Gulf of Mexico. However, regarding relative humidity, you can see we have a very moist air mass. You can see the relative humidity here. Very moist, 90% over basically this entire risk region here. Then instability as well. You can see start of the period, not much to be had, but as that surface low begins to form on Saturday, see all that southerly flow. These wind barbs are actually surface flow. Lots of southerly flow, and you get this, all this cape here, instability. The entire area loses any stability right around noon, right there, 18Z. That's gonna be 12 p.m. Central Time or 1 p.m. Eastern Time there. A lot of this region becomes destabilized at that point, and near that cold front, really across the entire region, you can have discrete supercells here and stronger stuff over here. We're going to look at the bulk shear in just a moment here, where you can see instability is very much on the table. At least 1,000 joules per kilogram over much of this region, but some regions closer to the surface low and closer to the Gulf, reaching about 2,000 joules per kilogram. They're quite a good amount for December. We move forward again, you can see that cape continues to stay in the surface low, but not nearly as powerful. We can see that on our day 3 outlook, where we have a pretty broad slight risk across some of these eastern states over here for some severe weather. I don't believe this model gets that far out. Let's see what the NAM does. I believe the NAM just has enough cape staying, yeah, enough cape there for the Carolinas. Possible this risk area will change, maybe become more on the coastline. So we'll see how that plays out. The main day of worry is going to be that day 2, that large enhanced risk for possibly strong tornadoes. So let's look at our cams. Let's look at HRRR here. Let me go back down to the southeast again. We're just gonna look at how the precipitation goes. What are we seeing out of this? You see right now we have those ongoing storms associated with our current outlook, which is the low marginal risk, 2% tornado and wind risk there. You see all those storms, but then the main thing of interest is going to be on Saturday. So we move over here to Texas. You can see this is likely some cirrus. We already have some cirrus from the upper low. You already start to get some storms developing right there in the morning hours even. That's 10Z, which is, I believe, 4 a.m., so very early in the day. Even here, right around morning time, lots of thunderstorms early on. Really pretty scattered, but they begin to organize a little bit right around noon again. That was our best area of, best time of interest. You can see that 500 millibar trough really takes on that look right there, 18Z. And you can see that jet streak already rounding the base and beginning to really fuel itself right there around 0Z. You see again, here's that jet streak. It weakens a little bit, but you do get a lot of stronger flow right there over Louisiana at that time. You also see a coincident stronger flow regime from the 80 millibars. So you get stronger flow right there over Mississippi, Louisiana. Again, that will really help those supercells. I'll take a sounding from here soon. I do want to look at how the storms will progress. See with our HRRR run, and you have all these storms, maybe even a few little confluence bands. Let's see if the RAP model has any mass convergence going on. Yeah, they have a few areas of mass convergence. There's one early on in the day, and maybe there's a few there. Very scattered, but plenty of convergence going on over this entire region. So that's the RAP is showing. Definitely good for storms. Move forward again, you have many discrete storms, possibly supercellular. There is a lot of bulk shear here, and eventually they become a little bit more linear. So this region here in Louisiana, the region in that enhanced risk, is a not bimodal, dual risk tornado and wind. So you can see again, basically the same size there. I believe it actually is nearly the exact same risk area there. But they're coincident risks that work together. You can see there's a Boeing line segment, there's a Boeing line segment, but you will have plenty of shear for all of these storms that could possibly pose that supercellular threat. You can even see here right off the coastline, there's definitely some possibilities. HRRR is a really well-defined little supercell right there in the Florida Panhandle there as well. Lots of storms over this entire region. There will be supercells, there will be tornadoes, and there will definitely be some squall lines in there. Look at the NAM covers this as well. See a little less storm coverage actually. You can see very well that once that cold front comes through, right there, see very well lots of storms along it, but even a few little confluence bands maybe here. Another squall line there. There's lots of potential to have storms really anywhere. Maybe even a QLCS right there. Very interesting to look at all these camps. Let's actually look at some more. We do have access to the high-res ensemble forecast. This one has a few other camps we can look at. Let's look at the southeast. Let's look at this one here. See what the HRW SSL, you can see lots of storm coverage, more so a large QLCS setup right there. The less discrete storms ahead of the line. You can see right here, plenty of low thunderstorms could be rotating there. See how this one goes with it. And definitely plenty of storms ahead of the line until they get kind of engulfed in that main. Oh wow, this is much more worrying on this one. See many discrete supercells right here. This model here, HRW FV3. Look at all those discrete supercells in here. There's one, there's one, there's one. So lots of discrete supercells on this model. Quite worrying, actually. You can see them all kind of combine, eventually kind of merge into the large line, but really almost discrete again there as well. And of course, the NAM Nest, we looked at more of a messy linear mode there, but definitely still some storms ahead of the line. Alright, let's look at the updraft helicity probabilities. I do like to look at this on the channel, but it's really useful to see when storms will be rotating. See that widespread rotation really begins, well, actually not really much of a bullseye, but you can see a pretty broad region for updraft helicity. HRRR really likes to kind of put everything, yeah, make lots of storms rotating here. NAMNES is a little bit on the less less intense side. This model we saw, which was showing basically complete tornado outbreak as well. Curious if it's a little excessive. You can see lots of very strong updraft helicity couplets there. Um, see really the intense amount from this model here. Pretty crazy. So there is some potential for quite a strong setup this day. That is something important to keep in mind. Also, a little bit of a flooding risk just to the amount of storm coverage, but that's not the real issue here. The real issue is going to be severe weather. We've looked at that so far. So let's take some soundings. I always like to take soundings. Let's do one of those morning storms right here around 12Z in eastern Texas. Then after that, we'll look at, let's take some Louisiana storms at 15Z here. See what the wrap's doing with that. And finally, let's do right around 0Z right here. The wrap model out of that line. I'm a little bit curious. Let's look at some of these more discrete storms right here around the Florida Panhandle at 18Z. Just see what's going on there. We got a lot of soundings to look at. I always like soundings. Here's our 12C sounding from in the Texas Panhandle, or yeah, not Texas Panhandle. Excuse me, Texas, Eastern Texas. You can see some rotation or curvature in the photograph there, but a little bit of curvature. Definitely some more intense shear. Let's see what the says. Does it? Not very well. 0 to 6 shear is about 42 knots, so it should be enough for supercells. SRH is a little bit on the lower side, so it's part of the reason why we see in our outlook that the Eastern Texan region is included in this risk. However, it's not in the most intense possibility. You can see we have that curvature in the photographs and definitely enough shear for supercells, just not an incredibly intense amount of SRH. Also, Cape's a little bit limited here, a little more stability coming off the nighttime, so that kind of makes some sense. Seeing the theta E versus pressure here, see it right here. Theta E is instability. I have lots of instability, but not right at the surface. You see a little inversion of instability there. That might help keep the atmosphere a little more stable for that. But again, you can see our environment is already pretty inducive, and we have a good amount of SRH even in the morning hours there. Look at our 15Z sounding here for regions in Louisiana. Again, we have a little bit of curvature in the photograph. Not much easterly flow here yet. But again, bulk shear about 41 knots. 0 to 8 actually is about 50 knots. And again, SRH is still kind of lacking, but we do have a lot more 3 Cape here. You can see right there. Here are sounding later on in Louisiana, right around 0Z. This is probably when storms are really starting to pick up more. Have that 3 Cape, a little more SRH there as well. And again, a little more curvature in the photograph. You can still see a little more of a windy look on the photograph, just because you have a lot more unidirectional shear. However, 0 to 6 0 to 6 here, bulk shear is still about 40 knots, so plenty for supercells and a lot more Cape in this sounding. Then finally, here's our soundings from the Florida storms, our 18Z, just because I'm curious about that. Less SRH, less bulk shear, but you could maybe get some mini supercells. You can see a lot more instability in this photograph, actually, in this QT, again, compared to other ones we took that a little bit of an inversion on that instability, but right there, you see plenty of instability all across that sounding. Maybe a secondary area of interest that you look out for. Be curious how that looks once the day comes. I won't be able to watch it too crazily, but see even maybe a little more shear on this one. Look at this photograph there. A lot better shear on those Florida storms. So that'll be interesting to look at as well. So in all, this is going to be a pretty dangerous day for severe weather. Again, we have a barrage of storms that are just going to be forming all day over this region, probably without much. It's pretty worrying, especially when you looked at this model here with all that. Check the reflectivity. They're pretty scary there. See that wide variety of possible supercells there on this one. Again, you just see supercell after supercell all over the place there. So some models are already hinting at a pretty significant event. The SPC has issued this pretty worrying risk there. 10% hash tornadoes, nothing to scoff at. It's a very large region. So if you're interested in more information, check the SPC Outlook. They always are very, very specific. If you wanted to see some information too, again, talked a lot about 0 to 1 SRH and how it will be increasing. The models weren't showing it very well when I just looked, however. See here, they didn't mention that as we go closer to nighttime, you do get that increased SRH, which should expand those photographs. That will be interesting. And they also mentioned the semi-discrete supercells. Again, that's just what we looked at. You have those linear lines. You can look back at the HRRR here. Has some line segments. There's a line segment. Also some some discrete elements there, plenty of supercells, lots of storm mergers likely as well. So it'll be interesting to watch this play out. If you're in this risk region, obviously stay safe. Check your weather throughout the day tomorrow. This is a fairly potent event, so it is important to be keeping your eyes on the skies. And with that, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. If there's any important updates, I'll probably post them in a community post tomorrow. But with that, I will say thank you for watching my video. If you learn anything, feel free to leave any feedback, comments, anything like that. It really helps me out. But with that, end this forecast. I'll see you next time. Enjoy your day.